All right, today we come to 1 Peter 4, verses 3 through 6. We've already looked at verses 1 and 2. I've included them here just for the sake of the context. But here we find Peter writing, "Therefore, since Christ has suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves also with the same purpose, because he who has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin, so as to live the rest of the time in the flesh no longer for the lusts of men, but for the will of God. For," now notice these connecting words. The word "for" tells you an explanation is about to come. "For the time already past." That is contrasted with the rest of the time in the flesh up here. So the time already passed. That would mean the time that these believers had already lived up to that moment, especially the time when they were not saved. That time is sufficient for you to have carried out the desire of the Gentiles. Now you notice this word desire. He had already said here the lusts of men, the time to live the rest of the time in the flesh no longer for the lusts of men. And then he says, for the time already past is sufficient for you to have carried out the desire of the Gentiles, having pursued a course of, and now he's going to tell us what these lusts of men are: sensuality, lusts, drunkenness, carousing, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries. These are examples of the lusts of men. So all of these are connected. These are the desire of the Gentiles. Now, the Gentiles is like a code word for unbelievers, lost people, unsaved people. Of course, some Gentiles were saved in the first century, but that's not how he's using the word Gentiles. He's using it as a code word for lost or unsaved people. The time already past, your past, that's sufficient for you to have carried out the desires of the Gentiles. You have pursued in the past a course of sensuality and lust and drunkenness and carousing and drinking parties and abominable idolatries. These are the lusts of men. And all this, they, now notice the word they. The word they goes back to these Gentiles, the unsaved people. They are two things. They're surprised that you do not run with them into the same excess of dissipation and all of these various lusts. They do that. They're surprised, number one. Number two, they malign you. And I'm just going to show the connection where the word they comes up. So they're surprised that you're not doing the same thing that they are, that you're not giving yourself to various forms of sin. That's surprising to them. And because you're not willing to walk with them, but instead walk in righteousness, they malign you. They persecute you. But they will give account. That's the third thing we learn about these people. They're surprised, they malign Christians, but they're going to give an account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. We have this word judge twice. The living and the dead, those who are still alive when Christ returns and those who have died when Christ returns. Jesus Christ is going to judge all people. And these people that malign Christians are going to have to give an account to Christ. And then he says, for the gospel has for this purpose. What purpose? The purpose that we are all going to have to give an account to Christ. Because that's coming. For this purpose, the gospel has been preached even to those who are dead. Now, what kind of death is he talking about? He's talking about physical death. Those who have already died. Some of whom are martyrs. They have died for their faith. Like Stephen, like James, and undoubtedly there were others. There were those who had already died, but the gospel had been preached to them while they were alive. that though they are judged in the flesh as men, they're judged by people, the people that malign them, the people that persecute them, the people that martyr them. They're judged in the flesh as men, as mere men, that they may live in the Spirit according to the will of God. In other words, that they might be saved and be in heaven with Christ forever. So that's why the gospel is preached to them, so that they can be saved from sin. Even though they're judged by other people and maligned by them and persecuted, and they're suffering for righteousness' sake, in the end, they're going to live in the Spirit according to the will of God. So let's take heart from this passage. Let's not give ourselves to a course of sensuality or lusts or drunkenness or carousing or drinking parties or abominable idolatries. These are the lusts of men that we should no longer live for the rest of the time in our flesh. We shouldn't live for that. We should live for the will of God. Now, there will be others around you that will not understand. They're going to be surprised. Your life is going to rebuke their unrighteousness, and they're going to malign you, and they're going to judge you. But in the end, you're going to stand before God, you're going to give an account to Him, and you're going to live in the Spirit according to the will of God, with Christ in glory forever. So let that encourage you today. Take heart, my friends.